Hello Outlanders, welcome to another video. In this guide video, we're gonna go over tips and tricks for beginners to survive and get more loot. Now the purpose here, if you're doing this, you're probably trying to build up your shelter, which means you're probably farming a lot of loot, which means you need to survive. So this guide is all about how to survive, how to get that loot, how to exit safely and not die. But before we go over that, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We are all Vigor all the time. We have Vigor guides every single week as well as gameplay every single week. So join us, hit that subscribe button, and like this video. Okay, so today we're going to go over how to survive and get more loot. It's just some basic tips and tricks for beginners if you're new to the game. Also, if you're a veteran and you've never really done the survival thing, you've only gone in and gone after kills and stuff like that, this could be a good guide for you as well. Now remember, the goal here is to survive and exit, up that survivability rate, and come out with as much loot as possible. You're probably most likely going to be doing this when you're upgrading your shelter because you just need so much loot in order to upgrade. Also, if you want to and you're working on upping that survival rate on the stats board. So first thing you're going to do is take in only what is necessary. You are going to die occasionally in Vigor, that's the name of the game, and you don't want to be losing supplies or weapons that you don't need. So for me, I take in 1 or 2 antibiotics or bandages, whatever. I never bring in more than that. I also take in only 1 gun with me. I never bring in multiple guns because I don't want to lose them. This makes it so that if I do die, I'm not losing so much stuff that it hurts. It's no big deal for me to hop out and hop back in. Tip number 2 into surviving and getting more loot is to not go immediately after Bard House or Airdrop. Now, there are going to be occasions that you do go after Bard House or Airdrop, but just recognize that each of these points are centerpieces, particularly once Season 3 dropped. Everyone goes after these. Airdrops are some of the most valuable loot when you get those crates, and Bard House has a ton of weapons. If you do go for these, I would be very cautious. I would sit outside the Bard House, maybe camp it a little bit, make sure no one's coming in or out. Maybe if you're all alone or you think you're all alone, then you can go for it at that time. Honestly, I would probably avoid both of these if you're looking to survive and get more loot, because it is a high chance that you are going to experience conflict here. So tip number 2, don't go immediately after Bard House or Airdrop, and honestly, probably avoid those altogether, especially as I'm trying to loot out. Because remember, if you die, you're not getting your loot, and you need that loot to upgrade your shelter. Next tip is to avoid gunfire. That's right, don't be ashamed of avoiding gunfire. Remember, this game is about survivability, and there are many ways to play, and surviving and exiting with loot and farming loot is a legitimate way to play the game. So if you hear gunfire, don't be afraid to cross the river, go the opposite direction, go in a house, avoid fire, avoid gunfire, avoid gunfights, and go after the loot. Remember, our goal here is to get in, get loot, and get out. Our next tip involves listening. Make sure you stop and listen every once in a while, because if you're running full speed, there is a chance that you could just run into someone without even realizing it. All footsteps are loud. That includes your own footsteps. And a lot of times if you're running and someone else is running next to you, you won't hear it unless you stop and listen. So every once in a while, as you're moving throughout the map, don't be afraid to stop, listen, see if you can figure out where people are, and then go the other way. If you think you can engage, although this is not a strategy in which we're going to be engaging a lot, right? So every once in a while, stop, listen. Can you hear anybody? Do you hear anyone moving around out there? And then continue on. Now, the nature of Vigor is such that you are going to occasionally get into some gunfights. You're either going to be surprised, or you're going to think, I could take this guy. It's only one guy. I don't think he has that great of a gun. And then you initiate the gunfight. You might come to find out that you are outmatched. This tip here is don't be afraid to run away from a gunfight. If you are outmatched, if you find yourself in a position, maybe they're higher up than you, maybe you have no idea where they are, run away. Don't be afraid to run away. Remember, we're focusing on farming loot and surviving, so running away is nothing to be ashamed of, especially if you think you're outmatched. Now, if you think you can take someone, this could be a good way to get loot. I wouldn't recommend engaging willy-nilly, though. Remember, we want to survive, we want to exit, we want to get that loot. Our next tip has to do with houses. Now, in houses is where you're going to find a lot of loot, most of your loot, in fact. So whenever you enter a house, make sure you close the door behind you. This is going to do 2 things. It creates a barrier between you and a person outside should they come up to your house. And number 2, if you are caught surprised, they have to open that door, and they can open that door and boom. Oh, I know someone's in this house. Let's get into defensive mode. Let's turn around. Let's fire back, right? Close the doors behind you, and then don't exit through those doors. I always exit through windows. Someone, if they're camping a house or they see you go into a house, they're going to camp the doors, usually. They're not going to camp the windows. Windows are a little bit safer to exit through, and don't be afraid to jump off the second story. You are going to take some damage, but especially if someone's camping the house, it will enable you to get away. They're not going to expect you to jump out the second story window, etc. So close the doors when you enter houses and exit through windows. And our last tip and trick for surviving and getting more loot for beginners is that when you're full of loot, exit. Exit immediately. Can you get more valuable loot? Probably, sometimes, but it's not worth taking the risk in dying and losing all that loot. Just exit. Fill up and exit. Remember, the name of the game here is surviving and getting as much loot as we can to build up our shelters. That does us for this video, everybody. Let me know, what are some strategies that you use to survive and get more loot? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. We're all Vigor all the time. We've got gameplay every week. We've got guides dropping every week. Join us. This is Vigor Gaming. Have a good time, and I'll see you in the Outland.